This is Popping the Bubbl with hosts Sandra Ponce de Leon and Pete A. Turner.
Hey, I'm Alex Kopelyan. I'm the program manager at IndieBio, and I'm here on Popping the Bubbl.
All right. Hey, Alex. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, and thanks for having us here all day long. We've been interviewing a lot of companies that are part of the IndieBio accelerator group and just been learning all sorts of things about science and biology. It's been amazing.
Yeah, I'm glad you guys are here. There's a lot of people doing some really interesting stuff. So I'm glad you got to talk to the founders and hear their story and get it out there.
Yeah, it's been really, really fun. I love it. So I guess, before we dive in, tell us a little bit about what IndieBio is and, what you guys do with and for these companies that are here.
Sure. So IndieBio is the world's largest biotech accelerator. We were started in March 2015. So the goal of IndieBio is to turn scientists into entrepreneurs. And we saw that, what happened in the software IT world, 20, 30 years ago, where all these people realized they could start building companies really quickly and cheap, is actually happening in the life sciences right now. So we're seeing a huge amount of PhDs, postdocs, and other really smart scientists who want to have impact with their work and their research. And we think that with the funding we give them, which is $250,000, and a dedicated lab space, a co-working space, and mentorship, we can help a lot of people start really amazing biotech companies.
What do you guys get for $250,000?
So IndieBio is part of a venture fund called SOSV. So in exchange for that $250K, we get about 14% equity in all the companies.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. And how many companies have you guys funded?
Including the companies we have in-house right now, which is batch number 5, we're at 67 companies in just over 2 years.
Wow. And the program, so how do you teach these scientists to be entrepreneurs? It seems like that might be a bit of a challenge given that a lot of these guys spend, most of their careers or have spent most of their careers in labs. How do you get them to take the shift over into the entrepreneurial mindset?
So it's a really hands-on process. We found the founders all naturally really, really smart people. You have to be able to go through that level of academia and research. It's just giving them a new tool set. So on the scientific side, we're really looking at how do you take science and research and translate it into a product that people want. And to do that, we work with these people and push them to really go out and talk to customers, partners, and other people out in the world to see, what is the problem they're really solving. So they're not building a solution, they're solving a problem. Mm-hmm. So right from day one, they're calling customers, they're, showing demos and prototypes and getting a lot of feedback really quickly. And they're using that customer interaction to guide their product design and discovery. And from there, they're actually, looking to get to market hopefully very quickly, or at least by the time they finish our program, they go on demo day with a prototype in hand to show to a room full of 800 investors, partners, media, and the rest who join us.
How long does the program typically take?
It's about 4 months, give or take a couple of weeks. So we try and schedule and buffer around major holidays and things like that because we want to get the whole ecosystem of the Bay Area, whether it's investors, a lot of the great biotech, life science companies involved. So we want people to come and meet these teams both during the program and then at demo day, we want to get a good crowd of a lot of people to give these companies an opportunity to connect with a lot of people who will help them grow their business. So
you've got a demo day coming up?
Yeah. So the tentative date is September 14th. Mm-hmm. We're locking that in. It's at Herbst Theater. So the old opera house near downtown San Francisco and City Hall. This is the second time we've been there. It's a really amazing venue. So we're really excited to be back.
I know you guys do a lot of hands-on things, but we are talking about scientists here. Mm-hmm. And so one of the things we've learned along the way here and doing all these shows is the product is great. Everybody's got a great idea. It's the grit to stick with it, but also the people that you talk to really bring them in. And I know you're going to say, well, we teach them how to talk to people, but go deeper into that. How do you take someone who's more quantitative minded and needs some qualitative stories and those kind of things? How does that work?
So we're actually, we're learning every single cycle as companies come in, we're learning along with them. So how does a food startup build a bigger company? How does a therapeutics company talk to customers? How is a consumer facing company interacting? So it's looking at a lot of different factors, really looking at the ecosystem of who is the person, making a purchasing decision? Are they the same person who's using it? Or maybe evaluating the product after it's purchased. What is the physical context of how is someone actually using it? Whether it's software, some sort of supplement or spray for agriculture, a food product. So how are the users interacting with it and the end product? Looking at really talking to customers about the pain point. What is the main thing they need to solve? What are the solutions now? Are they actually solving the problem? Or do people have to, hack together a solution? So asking a lot of different questions, really listening. As much as we can, we like to push teams to go to the office or the real world environment to see how is their potential customer solving a problem they have now, and what does that physical process look like? What is the person in action when they're doing something? What is their, what are their emotions around things they like? What are they frustrated by? Really understanding the people and knowing that, behind every single problem and product, there is a human being that they need to interact with and understand.
So after they've come through the 4-month program, do they get kicked out of the space? Or you guys like, see you later, bye, good luck?
They do have
You're
to
on
leave
your
home.
own now.
So they do need to leave home eventually. We give them a couple of weeks to settle down, clear out, find a new lab. Teams come from all over the world to join IndieBio. A number of them go back home. A lot of them do stay in the Bay Area. So we found a lot of alumni will cluster together to build out a new lab where they all go to kind of help share costs and make it cheaper. Some of them will go to local incubators and things like that. So, we work with alumni for the whole life of their company, but eventually they have to leave here. We need a little recovery time before we bring in the next group of companies who are going to take their space.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk a little bit about some of the companies have come through here that have seen some success, because you've had did you say 67?
Yep.
Yeah, that's a lot of companies. So let's talk about some of the companies that you've come through.
Sure. There's a lot of interesting ones in different areas. I'll highlight a few. I think the ones that have moved the fastest are companies in the future of food area. So one area that started from batch 1 in IndieBio is what we call cellular agriculture. So using microorganisms to make a protein or some other product. Mm-hmm. Our very first company that's done really well is called Clara Foods. They actually make egg whites without the chicken. So they're brewing it somewhat like beer. Wow. These guys found that there's a couple essential proteins that make up an egg white, and you can actually have bacteria, produce them, and then you recombine them, whether in the exact proportion of a natural egg white, or you can adjust the proteins to have different properties.
Is that considered vegan?
Yes. So one interesting thing we found is with all of our cellular agriculture companies, the vegan world is, really loves them.
Really?
Yeah. So, when looking at the ethics behind, animal consumption, companies like Clara Foods or Memphis Meats, which makes beef, chicken, pork, and duck without animals, it gets rid of factory farming. And there's all the, the ethical concerns, the environmental concerns. We think that these type of companies will really, help feed the world in the future when we have 8-10 billion people.
Wow. You said making meat, chicken, and pork, was it?
So,
but without animals.
Without the animals, yeah. So beef, pork, chicken, and duck.
And duck.
Without animals, yeah.
What is the source of their protein then? Are they just buy a bag of protein at the store or something and reconstitute it, or how does that work?
So they're actually going to live animals, like really healthy cows, pigs, ducks. They're taking stem cells from them. They're not killing the animal. They're finding healthy cell lines, and then they can grow those in large bioreactors. So the same way, we, would create proteins for insulin and other enzymes and proteins, they're using a similar technology to scale and create basically pure animal protein at scale and at much cheaper cost and much lower energy input than you would need to do it on a farm.
Wow. Typically, what's the exit strategy of these companies? Are they looking to get bought by a larger company, larger corporations? Like we talked to a lot of pharmaceutical, like that seems like the exit path for those companies. Is that generally how an exit would occur? Or do you think that there's going to be some IPOs as well?
So in all likelihood, there'll probably be a mix. We think a lot of these companies that have really groundbreaking technology and ideas will grow to be, $1 billion plus companies on their own right and stand on their own two legs to disrupt huge industries. With some other ones, like our drug companies, for example, we think a lot of our companies, which are platforms, they're actually creating multiple potential drugs, and they partner with large pharma to get certain ones to market and to fund the company. And then eventually they could potentially be acquired, or since they're a platform to create more and more different types of compounds, they could start taking them to market on their own and become an independent company. But then in other spaces like hardware or medical devices, that's a mixed bag. it's a really, really difficult space with a few very big companies that dominate it. So it wouldn't be surprising to see acquisitions, but I think one thing we look for with all of our founders is a really strong drive and purpose to solve a really big challenge and to build a great company to do that. So I think the founders want to build great companies and then lead them forward. So hopefully a lot of IPOs, some of them will probably be acquired too.
Amazing. That's really cool. And you were talking about a company that is manufacturing wine, but without the grapes.
Yeah, so Ava Winery is a group of really great founders from our first class, actually. And they just had the insight that with the new tools we have in the lab, you can really understand wine at the molecular level. So what are the actual individual components and how much of each makes up wine? So what they found, and Alec and Mardon could tell you much more, is that if you look at any vintage of wine from a certain year in a certain region, the terroir, what makes it its special type of wine, can really be broken down into what is actually in there. So they're analyzing the wine and making what we call digital copies. So understanding what's in that wine. So you can never drink the last bottle because you can always recreate it. And then they, without grapes, without fermentation, put all the pieces together to make a full wine and a full experience.
That is so crazy.
Did you just say that you can make wine without any grapes and constantly reproduce the perfect vintage indefinitely?
Exactly. That's the idea behind it. Yeah. So you never run out of your favorite 92 Dom Perignon or whatever.
Right. So it seems like, we talk to a lot of startups and everything, and there's a lot of ideas where there's hope, like we hope that this will transform the marketplace. But these are actually things, a lot of them at least, are actual things that people need, like breast reconstruction, providing a nipple for that. I mean, like people are going to need that and they're going to want it. Is there a predicted rate of attrition for the companies where they just don't get out for whatever reason? What does that look like, the attrition part?
Well, so far, we've been a bit surprised actually with how well the majority of companies have done. So out of, our 67 companies, about 50% have raised a full amount of seed funding or follow-on funding to keep going. Another 25 or so percent have raised, not the full amount, but several $100,000 to keep going for 6 months, a year to try and get to their next big milestone and then hopefully raise a larger round of funding. And then the remaining 25%, we're seeing a number that are getting by just on revenue right now, but we're also seeing a number of companies have, died and not made it. I mean, something that, in biotech, really, really early stage, it's very risky. So we understand that. And we tell founders that we want to accelerate their success, but also accelerate failure. So if you have an idea, we want it to succeed very quickly, but if it's not going to, there's no reason to spend 5 years of your life when you can find out the same amount of information in half a year. So, we're really, really happy with how well the teams have done so far. Fingers crossed it keeps going. We really want to support all these companies.
Yeah. What are those proof points that you look for to make those determinations into failure or success?
So, it varies. Companies have different milestones depending on their industry. And we have companies in almost every single industry you can think of. So with drugs, there's very important studies and milestones you reach there. With food companies that are very consumer facing, like plant-based foods, you're looking at getting distribution, co-packing, getting onto store shelves. And if you're really having trouble getting there, that can be a problem. Mm-hmm. With the companies that have died, they simply haven't found product market fit as well as they thought. Or oftentimes the timeline to get to revenue to sustain themselves was just too long. So in those cases, they found that just the business model wasn't working. So some of them have tweaked and then done really well. Other ones haven't been able to. So because most companies are still going, we're still seeing more data points of what are causes of companies failing. We're still figuring that out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I would imagine with a lot of these companies, the time to market is different than a typical technology product that you can get out in a couple months or, even 30 days. If you've got, just a one-man team that's programming and putting it out there because of all of the approval processes that they have to go through. So how do you account for that?
So it's pretty mixed across our portfolio. The majority actually don't have a lot of regulatory hurdles. So for the drug companies, the medical devices, with them, they obviously have some time to market. And their one strategy is partnering with larger pharma companies to help them get revenue. Otherwise, the investors understand this is a longer time horizon, so the risk return is different.
Right.
With companies that are more forward-facing, consumer-facing. We have quite a few that actually have revenue, have customers. Nerd Skincare is an example. They're a prebiotic for treating acne and then eventually other skin conditions. So, I'm not going to say their numbers, but they're selling on Amazon. They're in Birchbox. They're doing really well. We've had a lot of feedback that the customers really like them. They went viral on YouTube. So these are companies that they're getting out there very quickly.
Right. And for a lot of these companies, the key to survival is these relationships and introductions to either investors or the big pharmaceutical companies. Do you guys also help facilitate that?
Yeah. So we think IndieBio is fundamentally built on a network. So network in terms of helping teams get funding or customers, but also learning. So bringing in different mentors from tons of different areas to help teams out. So we do that, basically from day one. Companies who are at IndieBio are meeting investors, corporate partners. We have visitors from governments and companies really from all over the world. So I think this batch on day 2, we had a group of 20 or so Brazilian CEOs and executives who were in the life sciences trying to see what's happening in Silicon Valley and innovation. So we're trying to get those talks going really, really quickly. So founders come here from academia and they're pitching basically from day one and learning what's resonating with people out there in the world? What am I saying that confuses people? So they're working on their communication in that way.
Mm-hmm. That's great. That's one of the key things I think also with, having cycled through a few of the founders here. And I think that, that's a great thing for founders to practice their pitches and really get that feedback live in terms of, what their messaging, whether their messaging is resonating or not.
Yeah, definitely. In academia, it's really easy when you're working with other PhDs all day. You can use the most technical jargon and everyone understands it. People find really quickly that when you're talking to someone who's not a scientist or has a different background, you have to really adjust what you're telling them and how they relate to it.
How many companies do you guys end up rejecting of the applications that you come in?
So we take about, I would say between 250 to 300 apply every cycle. So of that, around 15 or so get in. So, what is it? 5% or so get into the program.
What's the common error that you're like, gosh, these guys were close. Maybe if they try again next time and they tighten up this, what's that this?
That's a tough one. We have had quite a few teams that have applied one cycle and then gotten in the next time because they, had a tighter scientific plan, or one of our gene therapy companies actually did. We asked them, hey, could you go do this study and then show us the data? They did, and we thought this is great. So we accepted them right away. With teams that we rejected, it's hard because they are very, very broad. Oftentimes, we're just not seeing how some sort of scientific breakthrough is going into really creating a product that people can get traction quickly with people. We want teams to be able to reach a significant milestone during the program. So then when they can use our connections in our network to get investment to really reach an inflection point. So we don't always see that being possible. Sometimes also teams, if you're working in a crowded space, we're looking at, oftentimes very, very unique innovations that sometimes don't have competitors. So the wine company, Memphis Meats, there aren't other people doing that. So we're really looking at very groundbreaking innovation that oftentimes if there's 5 to 10 other startups doing it, we think it's still worth doing, but we're not sure if that's in our wheelhouse exactly.
So has there been anything that pretty much everything that I've seen and heard has kind of blown my mind. But is there any company that has come through and that has just been completely out of left field? You just were like, whoa, I didn't think that was possible, or that's just such a crazy idea that it seems impossible?
So we've had a lot of interesting ones. I think one that stands out from our 4th class, actually, it was a company called Catalog Technologies. So this is 2 great scientists out of MIT and Harvard, I think Tim Liu's lab, and they're actually storing digital information in DNA. So they're basically what's right now archival storage. So, huge data centers that are, in fields or the side of mountains, they're storing that amount of information in DNA. So DNA is about 1 million times denser storage capacity than flash, which is our current best technology. So in a test tube, you can store, massive amounts of data that normally would need a huge data center. So they're a really amazing team. Actually.
Is this like singularity? Is that what we're talking about?
Not quite singularity level yet, but They are a really mind-blowing company. I think, I've explained them to a lot of people, and sometimes people don't get it right away. And then when they do, you just see kind of their eyes like widen, like, oh my God, like I just didn't get it, because it's such a kind of an out there concept.
Yeah. Amazing. Tell us a little bit about your team, the IndieBio team.
Sure. So IndieBio was started by Arvind Gupta, Ryan Bethencourt, and Ron Shigeta. So Arvind is a venture partner at SOSV, our parent venture fund. He also was an entrepreneur, geneticist by his undergrad training, and then a design director at IDEO. So Arvind really does a lot of work with teams on the design side. It's a very new aspect in biology, helping teams do business model design, their pitch decks and their story, interacting with VCs. He brings a lot to the table beyond that as well. Ryan Bethencourt is our program director. So he was a specialist in pharma sales and clinical development. So he really teaches teams. He's our hustler in chief, as we say. So he really pushes teams to sell and talk to customers, which is something that's tough for people. He's also a really knowledgeable scientist in his own right, and was actually the director of life sciences at the X Prize before IndieBio. Ron, our CSO, is a PhD from Princeton, postdoc at Harvard and Stanford. He's pretty brilliant in the lab. He knows how to do wetware, hardware, software. So he helps teams make scientific plans. June Axup is our science director. She was actually a co-founder of a company in batch number 2, and she's no longer with them. She joined the IndieBio team. We got really lucky. She's our science director. She works with Ron on the scientific side. And then my background, I'm the program manager. I have a PharmD, and I work with teams more on the clinical side and business side along with Ryan and Arvind.
Wow. Impressive.
Yeah. No doubt. PhDs are crazy around here. Wow.
Yeah, a lot of smart people.
Okay, so you have a lot of smart people here. What kind of dumb stuff do they do? Like, what do you like? How can you guys be so smart, but you can't work the coffee maker or whatever it is? I know those things exist. That's just how it goes. But what do you see that just blows you away with that, where you're like, how can we all be missing the most obvious things or whatever that is?
That's a good question. I think that the biggest thing that maybe because we've been here for many cycles, we see with founders and kind of scratch our heads a little bit is kind of on that communication side and really listening to people, because it's such a different skill set and they're talking to such different people. So we kind of sometimes scratch our heads that, they speak to people in incredibly technical and dense terms. And then they come back to us like, oh, that meeting went really well. And the person on the other side of the table will tell us, I didn't understand a single word that they said. Right. So that's kind of a relationship thing. And we're seeing it's just an adjustment from academia.
Yeah. So when you have a conversation with PhDs and peers all the time, you've got a command of the literature. And so there's already like a language that's a subtext to everything you say. And if that person doesn't have, the person you're talking to doesn't have that command of the literature, it's almost like a foregone conclusion.
Yeah.
And you lack that context to say, wait a second, hold on.
It's a different language.
Right. A totally different language with a sub-language underneath it, where like, even if I don't know exactly what you're saying, I have the literature in there that I can infer what you're saying. So there's like this multi-layered thing. I can see that being a problem. Plus, a lot of times when you're super smart, your brain's going 100 miles an hour and you've got this idea of what's happening and your brain is self-populating this idea. Meanwhile, you haven't taken care of the person that you're talking to, and it's just to do some checks to say, does this make sense when I talk about whatever, microRNA, whatever the process is? So I can see that definitely being a challenge for sure for these guys.
Yeah, definitely. Like you said, it's just learning to be able to be more relatable with more people and get on the same level faster. And even in mid-conversation, learning where someone is at, where they're confused, and adjusting and actually making it more beginner-friendly for the people around you.
So what do you have in the lab down there? It's pretty cool. There's all sorts of microscopes and other things. I don't know what the names of them are.
Yeah, so it's a fully built out biosafety level 1 and level 2 lab. So level 1 means you can work with bacteria and yeast and cells like that. Then biosafety level 2 is mammal cells, so humans and animals. So it has to be really multifunctional because we have teams that do very different things or in very different industries. So we have it built out where an agriculture or food team can work in the same lab as a therapeutics team or a medical device team. So it's very broad ranging. It has the first 150 to 200 tools that we think a biotech company will need. Some teams need some, others need different ones. But we really try and make it very cross-functional. And then we have partnerships across the Bay Area with core labs at academia or other places where, if someone needs a $1 million microscope, we may not have it, but they can go and rent it by the hour, and just jump on the train to get there. So we want teams to be able to do as much as they can here, but if not, then we have connections to do things elsewhere.
Very cool. Yeah, I was impressed by that lab.
Yeah, and then what's next for you guys in terms of those things? Obviously you grow, companies have a lot of success, more people want to come here. Obviously you want to say yes to more than 15 people in a cohort. So do you guys blow out this zone more? What's next for you guys?
So, we're looking at a bunch of different things. First and foremost, we want to make sure that the program we have here in San Francisco is as good as it possibly can be. We want every batch to have 15 companies that we do as much as we can for. Beyond that, all of us are really mission driven to help, accelerate the life sciences as a whole. So we've been approached by a lot of different people about having other locations for IndieBio. It's something that, we're not doing right now. We're not actively pursuing. But we do a lot. We advise a lot of incubators and other smaller accelerators in different regions of the world to try and help them build out their ecosystems. So we're constantly, either talking with people who are visiting us. We go give talks at universities or conferences all around the world just to try and spread the message of kind of this new option of life science entrepreneurship. We find that a lot of people still who are in the sciences think of my career routes are academia or, big industry. And we're kind of showing this new way. And a lot of times we get feedback from, students who hear us talk like, wow, this is really exciting, but we just never knew that this is really an option. So we're trying to grow the pool.
Yeah, that's great. And we actually talked to a founder that just came right out of her, getting her, I guess it was her PhD from the CEO of Sugar Logics. Mm-hmm. I thought it was pretty incredible that she just came straight to the entrepreneurial route without having a corporate background.
Yeah, we actually had one of our teams from our previous batch. They heard Ron speak at MIT, and they went back and talked to their professor who runs a lab. And he's like, no one's just going to give you money to start a company. Like, no one does that. And in the science world, it's a kind of a foreign thought. When in like computer science and IT, there's accelerators, and it's really a known route. So scientists are just starting to see this new world because they're not reading TechCrunch and these other entrepreneurship magazines. They're reading, Nature and things like that. So The message is very different.
Mm-hmm. Very cool.
Yeah, it's so amazing what you guys are doing here. And just, I always like to thank you guys for doing the work you do because, it's going to mean that someone's life is dramatically improved,
or saved even.
Saved or whatever it is. So it's just incredible. I mean, the wine thing is great, but you guys are really, one of the guys here is going to cure brain cancer, for crying out loud. It's, these are really big things. And if you guys, I know you guys know, but you need to hear also, thank you for creating these opportunities where there weren't those opportunities before. I mean, sure, you can go work for Stanford and go study brain things for a long time and, that's your life, but you're talking about a totally different ballgame, and it's incredible. So thank you.
Well, yeah, thank you guys. I appreciate, you spreading the word and actually supporting these companies, coming to be on panels to mentor teams on marketing and other things. It takes, people from all different types of backgrounds to make this stuff happen. So it's really exciting to see the support that other people outside of IndieBio are giving to the teams.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's fascinating stuff. So really fun day here today. Thank you for hosting us, and thanks for the introductions to the entrepreneurs. We've just had a great time and very educational as well.
Doubt.
Yeah, thank you guys. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.